There's a real document dug out of the sand in Egypt dated to the year 250. It's a certificate, small, plain, official, the kind of paperwork nobody would think twice about today. And to understand what it proves about one of the most feared phrases in the whole Bible, you need to know that the Greek word behind the mark of the beast wasn't invented by John on the island of Patmos. It already had a very specific, very ordinary meaning before he ever picked up a pen to write it down. Give this 3 minutes, because the popular image of this phrase, some futuristic microchip, some barcode on the forehead, some global tracking implant, isn't where the word actually comes from. And the real origin is stranger, older, and closer to home than that. The Greek word is charagma. In Revelation 13, it's the mark John says people will need on their right hand or forehead in order to buy or sell. But charagma wasn't a mysterious, invented word conjured up for a vision. It was already common currency, in the most literal sense of that phrase. It's the exact word used for the official stamp pressed into Roman coins, and for the seal branded onto certificates, contracts, and trade documents throughout the empire, something any Roman citizen would have handled without thinking about it, probably multiple times a week. That's the certificate I mentioned. Historians call it a libellus. Here's where the evidence needs to be handled carefully, because precision matters more than drama. By the middle of the 3rd century, roughly 150 years after Revelation was likely written, we have direct documentary proof of exactly this kind of religious certification, official paperwork proving someone had completed the sacrifice demanded by the emperor's edict, required to keep trading freely in the marketplace. That doesn't prove John's 1st century readers were carrying an identical certificate decades earlier. By the 3rd century, we can document one very concrete example of a broader connection that already existed in their world, between religious allegiance, civic identity, and participation in public life. Here's where it gets specific enough to matter. Dozens of these libelli have actually survived, preserved by Egypt's dry climate, and archaeologists have read and translated them, filed away today in university and museum collections. One, still legible after roughly 18 centuries, reads something close to, "I have always sacrificed to the gods, and now, in your presence, in accordance with the edict, I have poured a libation and tasted the sacrificial meat, and I request that you certify this for me below." Then comes a Roman official's signature and seal, dated to the exact day, sometimes even naming the specific temple where the sacrifice took place. That's not speculation. That's not a reconstruction. These documents have been photographed, translated, and preserved in academic and museum collections. Real papyri, not a scholar's guess at what one might have said. Now hold that image next to John's original readers in Asia Minor, decades earlier, hearing Revelation for the first time in a house church, maybe read aloud by candlelight. We don't need to claim they carried the exact same paperwork the 3rd century libelli describe to make the point land. What we do know, independently, is that the cities of Asia Minor were filled with associations, feasts, temples, and civic life, where religion and economic relationships often overlapped. Refusing participation could carry real social cost, even if we can't reconstruct one single empire-wide system of mandatory certificates operating that early. That changes the emotional weight of the passage. This wasn't originally an abstract puzzle about the distant future, something to decode with a calculator centuries later. It was written into a world where visible religious compromise and the ability to simply do business were already connected in exactly the way the vision describes. It's worth sitting with why the futuristic reading, microchips, global tracking systems, invisible barcodes, took over popular imaginations so completely, decades before any of that technology existed to picture. Every generation tends to map end times prophecy onto whatever advanced system it personally fears most in that moment. A century ago, some readers guessed tattoos or fingerprinting, both new and unsettling at the time. Decades later, others guessed something to do with the rise of national ID numbers. The instinct to attach an ancient symbol to whatever feels most threatening right now isn't new. It just keeps changing costumes, generation after generation, while the underlying anxiety stays exactly the same. So, what does Charagma actually tell us once you strip away the futuristic overlay everyone's grown up assuming? It tells us the original image was about visible, forced allegiance, a mark you couldn't hide, tied directly to your ability to participate in ordinary economic life, buying bread, selling goods, feeding your family. Whatever fuller or future application the passage may carry beyond its first-century setting, that's the picture John's first audience would have understood instantly, immediately, without a single footnote, because they were looking at something very close to it already, possibly that very week. There's a second detail worth noticing, easy to miss on a fast read. Revelation deliberately sets this mark of the beast against another mark mentioned earlier in the same book, a seal on the forehead belonging to those who follow God, given freely, without a marketplace transaction attached to it, without a signature required, without a certificate to carry around. Same location on the body, opposite allegiance, and opposite cost. One mark is bought with compromise, the other is simply given, no negotiation required. The text isn't really asking what technology will this be. It's asking whose stamp you're willing to visibly carry when carrying the right one costs you nothing, and the wrong one would have cost you nothing at all. That's a question that doesn't actually require a futuristic chip to matter. Every generation, including this one, has its own version of sacrifice a little of what you believe, get your certificate, keep your seat at the table. The specifics change, the pressure behind it, historically, hasn't. So where does that leave the original question? Is Charagma a coin stamp, a certificate seal, or something still to come, layered with a future fulfillment on top of its first meaning? Careful scholars land in different places here too, and it's worth being honest about that rather than pretending one reading has been proven beyond dispute. Some see the first-century certificate as the complete picture. Others see it as a real historical pattern that a future, fuller expression of the same pressure could echo again. What's not in dispute is the word's original, ordinary meaning, and that meaning was never mysterious or futuristic to the people who first heard it. Whichever reading you land on, the point was never meant to leave you anxious. The same book that describes this mark spends far more of its pages describing a different image entirely: worship, restoration, God dwelling with people, every tear wiped away, a city with no need for the sun because a different kind of light fills it. Revelation was written to people under real, immediate pressure, and its purpose was to steady them for what they were already facing, not frighten them into guessing at future technology they'd never live to see. That's worth remembering before the fear takes over the history. So here's what I'd genuinely like to know. Does learning the historical, everyday origin of this word make the passage feel less frightening to you? Or does it make the pressure it describes feel more real, less like science fiction, and more like something ordinary people have actually faced before? I'd like to hear your honest take in the comments, whichever direction it pulls you. If one ancient word can change how you read Revelation this much, wait until you see what one ancient number does to Daniel. Next time, we're looking at the single most argued over number in biblical prophecy, the 70 weeks of Daniel 9, and the math behind it is far messier than any prophecy chart online will admit. That's next.